Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not too pleasant in Motown. That's one of many cities. The unfunded pension liabilities of American cities is estimated to be about $1.4 trillion. How did they get that way? Well, the public service unions demanded bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger pensions. And so Detroit has to cut police. They have to cut the services about picking up garbage. They have to cut all these things. And so crime gets worse and everything gets worse. Well, they've now decided maybe we can get out of it if we file for bankruptcy. And there are other major cities in America that are trying to do the same thing, but a city isn't like a corporation. Here's the problem.
Well, a state judge has actually blocked Detroit's bankruptcy for now, and those other cities are also trying to figure out how to handle their massive debts. Charlene Israel has the story.
Nice.
When a city as large as Detroit fails, it doesn't happen overnight.
I mean, a lot of this debt, a lot of the practices that I put forward in my June 14th report that talked about deferrals, unfunded obligations, borrowings, addiction to debt, even a level of corruption from 2002 to 2008, which was significant, have created this problem.
Emergency manager Kevin Orr was hired back in March to fix Detroit's debt problem. He warned then that there was a 50-50 chance of a bankruptcy filing. Now that warning is a reality.
We don't have a choice. We've crossed the Rubicon on the level. We have 18 to 19 billion dollars in debt and no funding mechanism for it. So this is a question of necessity.
Public pensions are one of the city's major problems. Detroit has 18,000 retired public workers who are still owed pension and health benefits. But the funding for that program is under by about $3.5 billion. Governor Rick Snyder says enough is enough. He says retiree pensions have hampered state and city budgets. Now it's time for public workers to pay more of their health care costs. And it turns out Detroit is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to cities in financial danger. A Pew survey shows that 61 major cities across the nation are in similar circumstances. The Detroit Free Press points out they share a $217 billion shortfall. That comes from unfunded pension and health care liabilities. It's not clear if any of them will take the same step as Detroit. But Detroit Mayor Dave Bing says he hopes their bankruptcy filing will be a new start.
Detroit is a very iconic city worldwide, and our people will fight through this, and we will come back.
The mayor doesn't expect much help in the way of bailout money from the federal government. Both Bing and Governor Snyder say Detroit created their money problems, and now it's up to them to find a way out.
I've gotten great support from this administration. I've got great support from a lot of the different departments within the administration. They've been helpful. But now that we've done our bankruptcy filing, I think we've got to take a step back and see what's next.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Some years ago, one of my very good friends was an official in the Steelworkers Union, and he was vociferous in his opposition to employee governmental unions. He thought the private sector unions were fine and that they performed a great service, but he said when you work for the government, you're a public servant, excuse me, and as a result, you have an obligation. Would you see what happens when you have a union? When there's a union and the union has enough votes and enough clout to get whatever they want, and then if they don't get enough, they want more, and they want more, and they want more. Well, sooner or later, it's unsustainable, but everybody wants his piece of the action. That's called selfishness, and it's called greed. And now the people of Detroit have got to say no more. But you see, all across the country, we've got pensions. People are getting enormous pensions. You know, like garbage collectors are getting a pension of $160,000 a year or something like that. I mean, it's just insane, some of the money that's being spent. And cities can't afford it. They just can't afford it. These people, they pass beyond the working stage. They're not working anymore, and somebody else has got to take their place. And they're retired, and they're drawing these enormous pensions. And the cities can't afford it. But that's what happens when employee unions take control of cities. And they're all over the country. As I said, my friend in the Steelworkers Union said we shouldn't have public service employee unions. Well, let's see what happens to Detroit. Well, the British government says its national health care program is suffering some deadly failures. Lee Webb has more on that story from the CBN newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, a blistering report out of the UK claims thousands may have died needlessly in British hospitals due to poor health care. Britain's National Health Service is a renowned institution, but it's been criticized for years. As John Waggy reports now, the report adds more fuel to that fire.
The report accuses the National Health Service of poor care in at least 14 hospital trusts and says many patients have died as a result.
I can't remember the good times at the minute, so yeah, it breaks my heart.
It's an emotional topic for Rebecca Asplin, whose mother had a blocked bowel and died at home after being discharged with pneumonia from a British hospital.
There's no need for her to suffer like that just for a blocked bowel. You know, food and fluid, it's everybody needs to survive.
Sharon Walsh has one word to describe the care her late grandfather received.
Appalling is a word that I would use. Granddad went in trusting that people would look after him, give him basic care, give him the respect and dignity he deserved, and he didn't get any of that. Granddad was shunted about like a suitcase. 9 moves in 12 days. It was as if he was just part of the furniture, literally. He was just always there. So no one seemed to sort of acknowledge or take any notice, and they certainly didn't take accountability of his care.
The UK's National Health Service is so much a part of the country's fabric that it was celebrated in last year's London Olympics opening ceremonies, with a worldwide audience in the billions. But the latest reports of bad management and poor staffing make it a political hot potato in Parliament.
It is never acceptable for government ministers to put pressure on the NHS to suppress bad news, because in doing so, they make it less likely that poor care will be tackled.
The report is a headache for the Prime Minister.
Frankly, we don't serve our NHS if we cover up wrongdoing and problems. We've got to look at those problems, we've got to look at any instances of poor levels of care or poor management, and we've got to deal with them.
Officials insist that they have made progress in care over the past 2 years, but the latest report reflects badly on the country's health bureaucracy, which is the 5th largest employer in the world. John Waggy, CBN News.
Well, the pain at the pump isn't easing up, and it may get worse. The average price of a gallon of gas is $3.67. That's up 12 cents in just the past week. Experts blame problems in the Middle East and increased demand for gas during the summer. All of this comes as America is producing a record-breaking amount of domestic oil. But a shortage of pipeline means it's too expensive to move that oil to consumers here in the U.S., so instead it is going overseas. A new study shows the excavating process known as fracking does not hurt the environment. Fracking gets natural gas from deep below the ground. It's become an easier, more efficient way to create energy, but environmentalists say it's dangerous to drinking water. However, the study shows that the toxic chemicals used to get the natural gas out of the ground stayed well below the level where we get our drinking water. In fact, they remained a full mile below the drinking water supply. Pat, the study was conducted for a full year near Pittsburgh.
It's amazing. Some of the ads, they show people turning on their water and gas comes out, then it catches fire. I mean, it's so dramatic. These environmental, well, they're just fanatics. Well, Mr. Hollande in France has said, no, we're not going to do any fracking here. We may need oil, but we're not going to get any of it or any natural gas because we don't like the environmental fallout. Well, so far there's none, and they're talking about it bringing on earthquakes and such natural disasters. It's nonsense. I mean, the way they do it is very safe, and it opens up tremendous potential that is stored under the ground of so many nations, and it would be a great blessing if this natural gas and oil is brought forth. Lee?
Pat, at least 75 people are dead after 2 powerful earthquakes in rural China today. More than 400 people are injured, thousands of homes damaged or destroyed. The 6.6 quake hit near the city of Dingxi, more than 760 miles west of Beijing. Scientists say the quake struck only about 12 miles below the surface, making it much more destructive. Rock and mudslides are making it difficult now for rescue teams to reach that area. No deaths reported after a 6.9 earthquake hit Wellington, New Zealand Sunday. The capital city still felt aftershocks this morning. City officials told people not to go downtown today. Residents of a nearby town reported minor damage to their homes and businesses. A series of quakes hit Christchurch, New Zealand in 2011, killing 185 people and destroying much of the city's downtown. Pat?
You know, Lee, it's frightening when an earthquake takes place. I was in Israel, and I was in a hotel, and all of a sudden I felt this bump behind my bed, and I thought, who's beating on the wall behind me? Well, it was a big solid wall. There wasn't anybody. It was an earthquake.
I had that happen in L.A.
Did you?
It's a little unnerving.
Well, Tim was there.
Something this significant, I think, would be very unnerving to people.
Oh, heavens, yes. Well, it's part of the way we live. The Northridge quake my son Tim was in, and things were falling off the walls, and it was somewhat frightening.
That was deadly, yeah.
It sure was. But I mean, Terry, we've got this ring of fire, and you know, there's a map of it all around the Pacific Rim. These various tectonic plates move. The Earth is a movable feast. It doesn't stay in one place. And those things have to move, and they move, and when they rub against each other, the trouble is they lock, and then when they release, that's when you have the big bad ones, and they've been looking for the big one in Los Angeles for years and years and years. It hasn't come yet, but if it does, it could be a problem. So in any event, all we can do is pray for the best, but we live in a planet that has these plates joined together. It used to be, as we understand, it was one big continent, then it all broke apart. And these plates sort of want to join back together.
Well, and often when one moves, it causes another.
Everything else, but
area
especially up the Pacific West Coast, all the way up the coast from down in Chile and all the way up through Alaska and then back around into Japan, and then you get into Indonesia and Japan, you've got the real earthquake center, and it's tough. Well, we're talking about the earth. People are digging in the earth, and archaeologists have found something very interesting. Lee will tell us about it.
Yes, Israeli archaeologists, Pat, believe they have discovered the ruins of a palace belonging to King David. Other Israeli experts dispute that claim. The archaeologists, though, are from Hebrew University in Jerusalem and the Israeli Antiquities Authority. They believe it's the first palace of David to be found. It was discovered on this location, a large fortified complex west of Jerusalem. They say it's the best example of a fortified city from the time of King David. Other archaeologists say the complex could have been built by other folks like the Philistines or the Canaanites, but a Hebrew University archaeologist says they believe that they have solid evidence of David at this particular site. We'll keep you posted on that. Providing calorie information at restaurants is not helping people eat better. That's the finding from a study at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. The researchers went to 2 McDonald's in New York City. Both displayed calorie information for everything on the menu. The researchers also gave customers info about how many calories people should eat every day, but the study found that they went ahead with their normal orders and did not cut back on the calories. The study's lead author says it may not be realistic to expect people to keep a close count on how many calories they consume. And, you know, the restaurants, Pat, were forced to spend a lot of money to place that information on display.
All these studies, everybody's doing studies. It makes you sick at your stomach. There's some scientist comes out, some doctor comes out, and he's got a book he wants to publish, so out comes this study. This isn't good for you, that's bad for you. First they told us you need fish oil, you need fish oil, you need to have omega-3 fish oil. Then somebody comes out and says, oh, by the way, it'll give you prostate cancer. And you say, come on. You know, it's just...
You're so jaded.
Well, I mean, I'm so sick of hearing these things, really. I mean, you think you've got it cold, and then all of a sudden these scientists, I mean, I wish they'd get together and make up their mind.
Well, in this particular story also, probably someone who has chosen to go into a fast food restaurant isn't the person who should be interviewed for high-fat intake.
If you want to lose weight, ladies and gentlemen, I've been telling you, I'll tell you again, there are a couple of little pills. One is called green tea extract, decaffeinated, and I take 3 of them. And then there's something called acetyl-L-carnitine along with alpha-lipoic, and you take those. And then they've got some other little things that you take, and it cuts your appetite, and all of a sudden you lose weight like crazy. And it's just so easy. But I see those food, and I get sick in my stomach just looking at them. I mean, those greasy things with all those.
But some people love them. I know. It's well, we've done the show on excitotoxins and the fact that some of that makes you want more of that.
I read a book about this. A guy was losing weight. He said skinny people, they just don't respond to this. And this man was just loved pies and things. He was at a banquet, and he saw this guy. He was smoking, he was smoking a cigarette, and he took his cigarette and ground it out into a piece of coconut cream pie. It almost killed him to see this man do that. Because, I mean, he just wasn't interested in sweets. But in any event, okay. Well, we've beat up on the health industry now in England and in the United States. I don't know who else we can trash right now, but we'll do our best not to.
Craft store giant Hobby Lobby has won another victory against Obamacare's birth control mandate. That mandate requires employers to provide the morning after pill and birth control free of charge to their employees or pay a fine. A federal judge has granted the Christian family-owned retailer a temporary exemption. CEO Steve Green says he never thought he'd have to sue the federal government over something like this.
We love this country and the freedoms it stands for, and would never have imagined that we'd be in a position where we would be required to do something that would violate our conscience.
There are now more than 60 lawsuits challenging the birth control mandate. CBN Ukraine recently launched a website to help people free themselves from pornography addiction. Anti-Porno TV is a Russian language site that gives a biblical view on sex. It also shares testimonies. The site has recorded 400,000 visitors, and more than 300 people have used the anonymous online ministry service. Over a 1-month period, ads for the site were seen by more than 7.5 million internet users on more than 1,000 pornography sites. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.